Our topic is this whole month, the power of receiving. And last week we began with the question, do you receive? Are you able to receive? And we talked about how receiving is not something that is passive or weak, although many people in the culture think about it in terms of weakness. That in fact, receiving is a conscious, powerful choice to be open to the universe, to each other. That receiving is healthy and wise because it's the other end of giving, just as breathing out and breathing in are bookends of one healthy cycle. And how receiving is actually an act of giving. It's an act of generosity because in the act of receiving, you're giving opportunity and recognition. We ended up by saying that there is an energetic difference between the act of receiving and the act of taking. They're not the same thing. Which brings us to today's topic, are you a taker? So right at the beginning of that chapter, the author of this book, The Power of Receiving by Amanda Owens, she has this beautiful piece that I put on the slide. For every giver, there is a receiver. And for every doer, there is a taker. Curious. She's talking about the law of reciprocity that says for every action, there is a complementary action. It's a mirror image. It's a pair. It's a matching, just like giving is matched with receiving. Like going is matched with coming. Like loss is matched with gain. Like leaving is matched with arriving, and you don't have just one or the other. It's a matched pair. So the complementary action to giving is receiving. But what is the complementary action to taking? Well, the way she describes in the book is very insightful. In my own words, she says, well, when giving isn't authentic, then we're not talking about the type of action that is paired with receiving. In other words, when giving is reduced to obligation, then it becomes a task, and it's not the kind of giving anymore that's matched with receiving, because it breaks the continuity of that exchange of energy, that reciprocity is no longer present. It's a task, and she calls it doing, and it's one-directional, that kind of giving, as is that kind of taking. So the mirror image of that kind of doing, disconnected action is not receiving, it's taking. Both are one-sided, one-directional. I can see that. Giving as an obligation doesn't really have a heart connection to the recipient. And taking doesn't have a heart connection. It's isolating. So quiet in here. I was a visitor at one of those theme parks in Southern California, and a young woman was working there, and she was dressed up as a well-known character, and she was handing out something to the kids. I can't remember, it was such a while ago. I think it was either balloons or candy or something. She was handing it out, and she had this just glorious, big, giant, toothy smile. And I was standing on the sidewalk, watching her as she did this whole thing. And at some point, she finished. She had no more whatever it was to give away. And she turned away from the children, but I could still see her. And as she turned, that smile just fell off her face. Just fell, pow, like that. And I went, wow, I realized there was no obvious connection between her and what was happening, between her and the recipients of her handouts. It was a doing. It made me think of that phrase, professional warmth. Right? Where you're being paid to be congenial. And when it's done, it's done. Wow. Now, look, I don't hold her at fault for it, because on the other end of it, those kids, wow, they were just grabbing and taking. They didn't seem to really care about her as a human being. What might her name be? Where does she come from? Is she hot in that outfit? Might she be tired? No! They were just there to get something. They were taking what she had, and when she had no more, it was over. And there was no lingering in the empty space where the chaos had been. Nothing lingered there. In fact, it was characterized by heartlessness. I felt like I had witnessed a feeding frenzy. Yeah. See, giving and receiving, on the other hand, is a different character. It's a dance that requires partnership, both sides. To enter into the activity open-hearted, undefended, non-superstitious, free from controlling energy, as best as each one possibly can. You don't have to be perfect about it, but the intentionality is there to enter into reciprocity, sharing, mutuality, and then when it's done, the activity is done, something of the loving energy lingers in the space where the giving and receiving took place, no matter what the form of the giving and receiving was. And truly that lingering energy is the gift that keeps on giving. So the topic asks, so are you a taker, like the kids seem to be in the theme park? So it might be helpful to explore what some of the characteristics of a taker may be. A taker could be, it's not scientific, it's just a question. A taker might be someone who tries to get as much out of an interaction for their own personal benefit and give as little as possible in return. Or, a taker might be someone who pulls, yanks, tugs to get what they want. A taker might be someone who feels entitled to get what they want. A taker might be someone who uses others to get what they want. A taker might be someone who expects others to cater to their needs. A taker might be someone who never seems to get enough of what they want. A taker might be someone who, the more they take, the emptier they feel. And then appear to need increasingly more and more and more. And I think that has to do with the nature of taking, because it's a deceptive energy. I mean, taking suggests that the one taking will get somewhere and get something. But in fact, it frequently leaves the taker feeling emptier, maybe even needing to take more because it gives nothing in return. So there is no mutuality, there's no exchange, there's no feeding taking place. In fact, it even empties the people around the taker. I think that's why when people if you start stealing, you start the spiral downward that needs to be fed and fed and fed, the emptier you get. Taking is an emptying action. The receiving, on the other hand, is a filling energy. It's a different energy. It feeds everyone, no matter what is being exchanged, because the beauty is in the style, the attitude. That graciousness is so nourishing because it's rooted in kindness and sharing and mutuality. I had a friend. She was an attention taker. She stole attention. She wanted so much to be part of the group of friends. But she had a self-destructive way of taking attention. away from other people. Felt like it was being stolen. She wanted to contribute to the conversation, so she was always interjecting with stories and examples that began with me, I. And then she would take so long to tell her example with so many details because she had hijacked the attention that fewer and fewer of the friends were willing to give her any of what she actually wanted. It was sad to watch because as people withdrew, the louder her attention grabbing became. Until, and I watched it happen, until a moment came when she reached the threshold and she learned to let people give her what they could. And everything seemed to shift. And I was remembering this friend, and I realized that sometimes I see that habit in me. You know, especially when I'm insecure in a social setting, you know, I'll start to grab. And I'm learning now to receive conversation instead of hijacking it. It's a whole different something. And I'm learning that receiving has an energy of I am part of this exchange, whereas taking has the energy of here I am, I'm isolated and I'm not connected to anything. And so as a result, receiving engenders community, it produces connection, whereas taking results in isolation and separation. I've been playing with a very well-known quote from the Bible in Luke. It's all about the law of reciprocity and giving and receiving and messing with it. So I brought it along. It goes like this. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down and shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the same measure that you use, I like the King James Version that says, with the same measure that you meet, it will be measured unto you again. In other words, just as it goes out, so it comes in. And I thought to myself, what if I exchange give for receive? What will I get? Receive. And others will be able to receive from you also. I thought, interesting. Now I'm going to have to change the rest of the quote too. So I'll start at the end, the last sentence. You see that last sentence with the same measure that you use? Because to me what that means is this. Because the attitude with which you give sets up how people will give to you. Now what if I substitute receive for that? Because, you know, that's the way of things. I'm going to get a good measure back. Why a good measure back? Because that's the law of reciprocity that says the way in which you engage, that's what sets the tone for the game. It's that whole thing about what goes around comes around. So I changed it to say, because how you receive sets up how people will receive from you. So, if you are a taker, you're going to be setting up an unequal situation, a one-way street, and you're going to get back a good measure. Maybe it'll show up as people instinctively trying to get out of giving to you because you're emptying them. Or to be blunt about it, say it obviously, take, and others will take from you everything you've got. Because what is in your consciousness sets the rules for the game. This is where we groan. All right, I'll groan by myself. So back to the topic. Are you a taker, like the kids at the theme park? Well, perhaps it will be helpful to further explore some of the characteristics of a taker. It's a self-assessment process. You don't have to raise your hand. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Or we could do the offering. No way. Sit down. Here we go. Are most of your spiritual practices, your prayer and your meditation affirmations, about and for yourself? How about this one? Are you convinced that most people are takers, so you maintain a high alert so that you don't get taken advantage of? How about this? Do you do whatever you can to make yourself happy and avoid anything that makes yourself unhappy, even if in doing so you make others unhappy? How about this one? Do you give up and move on when you don't immediately get the result you desire from other people? How about this one? Do you leave charitable contribution up to other people to take care of? Wow. How about this one? Do you remind people how much you've given to them? See, I do that. Constantly. It's so embarrassing. I do. Subtly, I'm expert. How about this one? Do you start conversations talking about yourself? Or how about this one? Do you strike up conversations mainly with people you might be physically interested in or from whom you think you can get some value, leaving the rest quiet? Whoa. How about this one? In conversations, do you spend most of the time talking, expecting other people to fully pay attention to you and listen? And would you say that you don't particularly care what other people think about you? Now, if you answered yes to one or some of these, it doesn't necessarily mean a single thing. But it could be that you might be teetering on the edge of some taking-like habits. It could be. And there might be a possibility for room in you to step back and explore a relationship with the world that has more mutuality in it. It's possible. I don't know. And to be clear, on the other hand, being an overgiver, with forced generosity or being overly accommodating and agreeable to whatever has its own set of problems, right? It also leads to emptiness. It also leads to feeling exploited or resentful. There's another way. There's a middle way with good boundaries so that you don't have to become a doormat and you don't have to become a taker. There is another way. And it requires or is characterized by generally being interested in mutual success in a world that works for everyone. Characterized by having an optimistic belief that there is actually enough to go around and share easily and effortlessly. It's a value of bi-directional sharing and trust in it. It's characterized by enjoying seeing other people succeed and be at ease as much as you enjoy seeing yourself succeed and being at ease. And it's characterized by having confidence in the way this spiritual universe of reciprocity works, so that we don't have to feel any risk or disadvantage by either receiving or contributing. We feel at ease in the world. It is interesting to me to think about what it could mean to our prayer work if we have a problem receiving or taking. What do we expect from the universe? To break through those barriers and bad habits. It's interesting, isn't it? To make the shift from taking to receiving actually doesn't take much effort. It's a change in attitude. I can think of at least 4 helpful ways to do that. The first being the start. To start with this core acceptance that you are enough. That giving and receiving will add nothing and take nothing. That just sitting there, you are enough. And you can enhance that awareness by literally paying attention to the good that flows into your life with or without your participation. And even make a practice out of it. Carry a notebook around it and start recording everything free that comes your way. It's a very beautiful practice. Somebody smiled at you, write it down. Somebody gave you an apple, write it down. Make an actual note of it, because getting engaged on that level is the way you really refocus your awareness, your consciousness to what is already flowing through your life, whether or not you deserve it. It's beautiful. Number 2 is this: to make room in your mind to receive by expanding your awareness of how we are interdependent. How our good literally rests on other people. And the way you can practice this is make it a daily practice. Choose something, anything, every day. One thing to think about. And all you have to do is sit and think about it. Pick something that highlights how you are dependent on others. You might think, I'm not at all, but if you choose anything and think about it, you will see. You choose the chair you're sitting on, the fresh water that comes into your kitchen. Just choose one thing and think about it and try to imagine all of the people who had a part in bringing it into your life. Try to imagine what your life might be without it. Every single day, pick something. Electricity. Go all the way back to its discovery. All the failed experiments. All the dreams. All the people. All the ventures. You can do this exercise with your food. It's a great thing to do before every meal. Look at the food you're about to consume and just pick one little part of it. A tomato. And imagine all of the people who had a part in bringing it to you. And how there is no way you could accomplish that in isolation. And then imagine that there is a strand of energy from you connecting to them. And then look at the strand in your imagination and see if it's one way only. Begin to loosen that up so it goes both ways. And then you can imagine you're receiving even of your lunch, even of the chair you're sitting in, is a way to give honor and meaning to the effort and contribution to all of the people that are part of your reality that you will never meet. And to receive that. And the third easy exercise is to take time to examine the consciousness of your giving and receiving with that passage from Luke in mind, the law of reciprocity. In other words, take a careful look at the style in which you receive. What have you been setting up? Am I making it easy or difficult for people to receive from me? Am I making it a burden or a joy for people to receive from me? Is there any controlling in my receiving, in my giving? Is there an attitude? And sometimes when you explore this, you might come to the realization that I also need to learn how to ask. Because some people struggle with giving. Some people struggle with receiving, but many of us struggle with asking. And we might have learned self-destructive ways of asking. No worries. Next year in the spring, I'm going to bring back the class circulation, joining the dance. I'm going to teach it. And in that we look at giving, receiving, asking, and forgiving, and all of the cultural blocks that we face and how to be at peace with those activities. And the fourth one is this: to embrace receptive states of being that provide the platform upon which healthy receiving rests. And I read these to you last week, and they are listed in the power of receiving. And I've brought the slide of them again to read to you. But I'm going to invite you to let your eyes close and hear the words like mantras, because just the reading of them has the effect of bringing into the room, perhaps into your own mental atmosphere, the state of openness that is most beneficial to being open to receiving. So I invite you to breathe in and sigh. And whether you read or let your eyes close, begin to unfurl, to open yourself to an atmosphere of oneness. Meditating, allowing, noticing, including, appreciating, letting be, listening, opening, observing, embracing, being, attracting, feeling, relaxing, welcoming, contemplating, accepting, letting go, yielding, hearing, watching, acknowledging. And as I let these words settle into my awareness, I take a moment with everyone here to turn to that presence from which it all comes, saluting it, acknowledging it as the one life that we are all living. That one life that connects us as we each live in our unique, separate way. We can no more be separate from each other than breathing can be separate from intake and outtake. And so we rest in the sense of unity and oneness, allowing ourselves to deeply appreciate how the gift of life is already present without effort. And so we find in this silence in our own consciousness a seed of welcome and willingness to be open to the good that is already flowing. In deepest gratitude and with a heart of joy, I release this word of prayer to that infinite law of mind that establishes me, us, in the experience of being ready, willing, available, and open to life. And so it is.